Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've been following the EV space, you know charging infrastructure is literally the backbone of mass adoption. But right now, we are slamming into two massive walls. We've got macro-level funding bottlenecks severely throttling infrastructure expansion, and micro-level operational failures making the chargers we already have planted in the ground infuriatingly unreliable. Today, we're going to break down the latest data, some major policy shifts, and a groundbreaking academic solution to see exactly where we stand. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The EV charging crisis. 2. The 2026 funding cliff. 3. Why are chargers broken? 4. The operator blind spot. 5. Better metrics, better charging. And 6. The road ahead. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The EV charging crisis. 20%. Just pause and think about that number for a second when we're talking about basic, essential infrastructure. According to consumer intelligence data spanning 2021 to 2024, roughly 1 in 5 EV drivers pull up to a public charging station only to find they cannot charge their vehicle. Imagine if 1 out of every 5 gas station pumps you visited was just totally dead. There's no way we'd accept that, right? It would be front-page news every single day. To really understand how bad this is, let's look at a major regional study out of the San Francisco Bay Area. It turns out nearly a quarter, 23.5% of the surveyed public fast-charging ports simply didn't work. They were plagued by broken connectors, blank screens, and payment failures. The consensus across the industry and academia is crystal clear here. The chargers are physically out there, but far too often, they just do not work. Moving to Section 2, the 2026 funding cliff. Now, the government originally had a massive plan to fix this infrastructure gap. The Federal Highway Administration's NEVI program, that's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, set some sky-high financial expectations under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Just looking at the initial apportionments for fiscal year 2026, the numbers were incredible. We're talking nearly $87 million for Texas, over $81 million for California, and $42 million for Florida. This was totally supposed to be the golden age of infrastructure build-out. But reality hit hard. According to recent reports from the independent electrical contractors, things played out quite a bit differently. Back in 2021, that massive $4.4 billion NEV program was established. Fast forward to early 2025, and an incoming administration put a freeze on that funding. Even after the freeze was lifted, the rollout was incredibly slow. By January 2026, states had actually spent a mere 2% of the original billions available. That's just $94 million. And the kicker? In February 2026, federal budget cuts passed into law, dropping the authorized spending for nationwide EV charger installations to a total of just $300 million. So we've hit a very steep funding cliff where states now have vastly reduced resources. Section 3. Why are chargers broken? So if we can't just buy our way out of this with new chargers, why are the ones we currently have failing so often? This is absolutely fascinating. Nearly 89% of public U.S. charging sites are tied to external networks like ChargePoint or Blink. Why does that matter? Because the actual local site operators, think of the hotel, the grocery store, or the university parking lot where the charger is physically located, are completely dependent on opaque third parties for their own data. They host the charger, sure, but they can't actually see the internal software data to know if it's working. And when we break down that Bay Area study, you quickly realize that physical hardware issues, like a broken connector, only account for a tiny 0.6% of failures. The real culprits? Software and networks. We're looking at payment system failures hitting 7.6% and charge initiation failures at 6.1%. Then you have on-screen error messages and blank screens. These are almost all software and network glitches. But because local site operators don't have access to the granular network data, they are completely powerless to fix them. Which brings us to Section 4, the operator blind spot. The core of this blind spot comes down to how we measure reliability. The government standard right now is the NEVI uptime metric. It basically asks, was the charger available to dispense electricity over the past year? But Stanford researchers are pointing out that this metric is simplistic, opaque, and measured yearly. If you're a site operator getting yelled at by a stranded driver today, a yearly average is completely useless to you. Instead, these researchers propose actionable metrics that break down behavior into operationally meaningful states, measured daily or weekly. This isolates whether a fault is a true hardware malfunction or just a lost internet connection. Section 5. Better metrics, better charging. First up, they define a metric called unreachable time. This tracks the exact periods when a charger simply loses its internet connection to the central management system. You know how it is. A driver plugs in, but the charger can't authenticate their payment, so it just sits there. By tracking unreachable time, operators can pinpoint local Wi-Fi or cellular network drops, rather than mistakenly blaming the physical charger itself and waiting weeks for a hardware technician who isn't even needed. Next is fault time. These are periods when a charger is down due to a self-reported internal error. And the academics lean into a fantastic analogy here, calling these zombie chargers. On a broad annual report, these chargers might look alive and well, but locally they are faulted out. They are literally the walking dead to any driver who pulls into the parking lot actually hoping for a charge. So because states can't just buy their way out of this with new machines anymore, EVCE is a total game changer. It's an open-source charging site performance tool developed by the Stanford team. The brilliant part is that it extracts this granular data right from the existing infrastructure. It intercepts the data from the charging network dashboards, normalizes it, and empowers site operators to see exactly what is failing and why without having to install expensive new hardware or modify their chargers at all. The researchers actually put this to the test with a multi-year case study on 98 chargers at a California academic institution. Now, if you only look at the government's standard yearly uptime, the site scored an 85% in 2024. Not perfect, but seemingly okay. However, that yearly number completely masks the daily volatility. When they applied their daily metrics, they found days where uptime plummeted below 70% due to massive intermittent network connectivity spikes. They also found a constant baseline of those zombie faults. This high-resolution reporting proves that a seemingly acceptable 85% yearly average hides a wildly inconsistent and frustrating day-to-day experience for drivers. Finally, Section 6, the road ahead. All right, so here is the stark reality we face today. That grand vision of endless federal funding has hit a massive wall, with the FY 2026 budget slashed to just $300 million. Massive infrastructure expansion is officially stalled. Therefore, salvaging and optimizing the chargers we already have is the fastest, cheapest, and most viable path forward. To pull that off, local site operators, the people actually hosting these chargers, desperately need open-source tools like EVC to pierce the data blind spot, isolate those faults, and finally demand accountability from their network providers. Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. If endless government funding isn't coming to build our way out of this problem, is redefining reliability with granular micro-level data the true key to saving the macro-level EV transition? It really might be. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep your eyes on the data.